Welcome to Conversational with Carrie Olsen, where we explore what it takes to build a voice acting career that's authentically yours. I'm your host, Carrie Olsen, voice actor and coach, and I'm here to help you transform your voice acting approach, both in the booth and beyond. Let's get conversational. So I have a confession to make. For years now, I've wanted to get into animation. And that's not something that I have shared often, although I have shared it publicly before. I think it would be so much fun. And I've gotten a lot of training in it. I've trained with some really notable animation voiceover coaches. I've gotten great feedback. I know what my next steps are, but I've just never taken that next step. I think there's a part of me that's just comfortable where I am, or maybe I know that it's a whole new world, different from what I currently do with commercial and promo and e-learning. And maybe I just am avoiding feeling out of my element. Regardless, it's something that I know I've wanted to do, but simply haven't implemented all of the training that I've accumulated. And I'm wondering if that sounds familiar. Is there something that you also maybe know you need to be doing or have told yourself that you want to do, but have been sitting on it? This is what I call the implementation gap. It's that space between what we know we should do and what we actually do. And for some voice actors, it might be the single biggest obstacle standing between where they currently are and the success that they want. In our previous episodes, we've talked about the importance of being more than just a good voice. We've explored how the culture of upgrading keeps many voice actors stuck in a cycle of consumption rather than production. And last episode, we began discussing how your unique background and experience form the foundation of your pre-marketing strategy. But today, we're getting practical, because all the knowledge in the world doesn't matter if you don't implement it. So one of the things that I find fascinating is the psychology behind why we don't implement what we know. It's not that we're lazy or unmotivated. It's quite the opposite. Voice actors are some of the most dedicated, hardworking people I know. You have to be in order to start a new business like this. So what's really going on? I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I've realized that there's this invisible line that separates the learning phase from the doing phase. And it just happens to line up with my kids have been studying Julius Caesar in school, and they just recently came across the story about him crossing the Rubicon. And so they had to learn that phrase, crossing the Rubicon, any situation where you come right up to the edge of a decision you have to make or an action you have to take. And once you've crossed that line, you can't go back. And so there's this tension as you decide, should I cross this line or not? Because it's safer to stay on this side because you're already familiar with what's on this side. But once you cross, you enter into unknown territory. So here's an example. As long as you're in study mode, taking classes, watching tutorials, attending webinars, reading books, then there's no pressure to produce. It's safe. You can tell yourself and you can tell other people, I'm preparing, I'm developing my skills. And of course, that is perfectly valid. We all need that. It's kind of a rite of passage in voiceover or building any business that you go through that skill development or skill acquiring process. And you know when you're in that study mode that the moment that you cross the line into market mode, when you start auditioning or you start reaching out to potential clients, when you start answering the question, what do you do for a living with, I'm a voice actor, well, now suddenly there's pressure. And every day that you're not booking can feel like you're failing. So now it's no longer just about learning, it's about results. And that shift, that can be really terrifying for a lot of people. And the way I see this in some students is that they'll happily invest in training after training after training, but when it comes time to actually implement what they've learned, to cross that line, well, now suddenly there's resistance. And sometimes it's totally valid reasons or they're justifiable reasons that can seem like Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. That's wise, even. I'm not going to start marketing until this particular page of my website is done. Or until I get the order of the spots on my demo just right. But what can happen is if you pile up enough of those explanations, it just becomes this barrier. It becomes the thing that is preventing you from ever taking forward action, and it's just keeping you safe on your current side of the Rubicon. The one more thing that you need to learn or do or experience before you actually start implementing becomes a moving target, and it keeps them safely on the preparation side of the line. So the question is, what's actually behind this resistance? Well, I think one of the things that it comes down to is fear. And fear is such a huge topic in all of acting. We all know that one of the biggest fears that people have is public speaking. They say that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. But here's where I'm going to say something that might surprise you. Fear isn't always a bad thing. In the proper proportions, fear is actually super helpful. It keeps us from taking really stupid risks or rushing into situations that we're not truly prepared for. A healthy dose of fear can actually provide motivation and focus. But when fear becomes paralyzing, when it stops us from implementing what we've learned, that's when it becomes a problem. And I see a spectrum of this among voice actors. On one end are those with too little fear. They jump in with unrealistic expectations, thinking that booking work's going to be easy. Then they get discouraged when things take longer than what they had thought. And then on the other hand, there are those with too much fear, and they never feel ready enough to put themselves out there. The sweet spot is in the middle. Enough fear to keep you grounded and help you to have realistic expectations of the work that you need to do to build your business, but not so much fear that it prevents you from taking action. I personally encounter this with marketing regularly. Even after years of doing it, after studying it and having a lot of success with it, I still have to psych myself up every time that I market. My trick is I reframe it in my mind. So instead of thinking I'm bothering people or I don't want to be a burden, I tell myself, I'm helping clients by doing outreach. I'm making it easier for them to hire a voice actor who's going to be a really good fit for their project, hopefully. And that slight shift in perspective helps me to get excited about reaching out rather than dreading it. So what about you? What's your relationship with fear? Where are you on that fear spectrum? And what implementation tasks do you find yourself avoiding? There's another psychological factor at play in the implementation gap, and it has to do with how we measure success. Most voice actors focus on what I call lagging indicators, and those are outcomes like booking a job, earning a certain amount, or signing with an agent. And these are all results that come after you've taken action, and they're really not directly in your control. What's far more effective is to focus on the leading indicators. These are inputs like the number of auditions you submit, the marketing emails you send, or the hours you spend practicing or in training. These are actions that you can directly control. When you shift your focus from outcomes to inputs, something powerful happens psychologically. You no longer tie your sense of success to external validation, which might take weeks, months, or even years to materialize, but instead, you can celebrate daily wins based on the actions you've taken. And this isn't just feel-good advice so that you feel better about the things you're doing. It's actually a practical psychological tool because our brains are wired to seek rewards. When you focus exclusively on outcomes like booking work, you might go really long periods of time without that psychological reward, which can lead to diminished motivation and eventually just giving up. We talked about the drift tendency in a previous episode. But when you focus on inputs, these are things that you can directly control, and you celebrate completing them, then you create a steady stream of small wins that keep you motivated and moving forward. So with all this in mind, how do we bridge the implementation gap? Here are 3 practical strategies based on what we know about the psychology of implementation. Strategy number 1, make the invisible visible. One of the reasons implementation is difficult is that our goals often live in our heads as these vague, abstract concepts. But when you make your goals concrete and visible, they become much harder to ignore. So write them down, put them somewhere where you'll see them every day, tell someone else about them. Just the simple act of making your intentions visible creates accountability and makes implementation more likely. Strategy number 2, focus on the next small step. When faced with a big goal, our brains often go into overwhelm mode. The psychological resistance feels enormous because we're looking at the entire mountain that we need to climb. Instead, just focus on placing one foot in front of the other. Don't worry about booking your first national commercial. Just focus on recording 3 practice scripts a day. Don't stress about building a complete marketing strategy. Just focus on researching 5 potential clients. When you break down your goals into these tiny, manageable steps, then you bypass the psychological resistance that comes with thinking about the entire journey. Strategy number 3, create an implementation system. Willpower only goes so far, and your motivation is going to go up and down. So the key to consistent implementation is creating systems that don't rely on either one of those things. This is where a tool like my implementation action plan comes in. It's a monthly planning worksheet that helps you break down your goals into specific, actionable steps with clear timelines and success metrics. I have seen this tool transform people's voice acting careers. Because if you think about it, if you spent your entire voice acting career, maybe years, staring at giant mountains and not knowing what the first step is to scale that mountain, and then all of a sudden you are presented with a tool that chops that mountain up into individual steps. And all of a sudden, now at the end of a month, you've actually made some progress. You've actually gotten somewhere. There are things that you can celebrate versus still just being at the base of the mountain, staring up at the top. What I love about this approach is that it takes the emotion out of the equation. Once you've set up your plan, implementation becomes about following a system rather than fighting that psychological resistance every time. Speaking of systems, I've created a free implementation action plan worksheet for you to download. This isn't just another planning tool. It's specifically designed to address the psychological barriers we've been discussing. It doesn't just address those barriers, it helps you to celebrate. It actually provides motivation as well. The worksheet includes columns for your monthly goal, small specific steps to achieve that goal, resources needed for each step, your timeline for completion, and then also indicators for success. How do you know when that particular step has been successfully completed? But what makes the worksheet really special is that it also includes space for rewards for completing each step, along with a reminder to celebrate those small wins. These elements directly address the psychological factors that prevent implementation. By building rewards into the system, you create those small dopamine hits that keep you motivated. By celebrating those small wins, you maintain momentum through the entire implementation process. You can download this worksheet at carrieolsenvo.com/EP4. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with this thought. Implementation isn't just about doing, it's about becoming. Just like what we talked about in episode 1, conversational isn't just something that is direction that voice actors get from clients. It's a way of life. And when you choose to cross the Rubicon and take those risks to start to put in motion your plans, then you're starting to live your life more conversational. In our next episode, we'll be diving deeper into how to leverage your authentic self in your voice acting business. We'll explore how the unique experiences we discussed in episode 1 can become the foundation of your brand strategy. If you found this episode helpful, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a voice message at carrieolsenvo.com/EP4, and you might just hear your question or comment featured in a future episode. And don't forget to download your implementation action plan worksheet at the same link. And when you achieve a goal using the worksheet, you can email me at carrie@carrieolsenvo.com so I can celebrate with you. And if you're on the go, you can text VOICE to 55444 to get a hold of the Implementation Action Plan or any of the other resources we've offered so far on the show. Thanks for being a part of the conversation today. I'm Carrie Olsen, and if you'd like to stay connected, text VOICE to 55444 for exclusive resources. Until next time, remember, your voice is unique. Your path should be too.